Mary Orvis Marbury says that the hackle flies are named for either the color of the hackle or for the material used for the hackle. This hackle fly is a deer hackle using white underbelly deer hair. I am tying it on a number 12 hook. I've chosen the size of the hook mostly because of the wider gape necessary for a deer hackle. I am using claret thread to try to mimic the tag shown in the illustration by Charles Orvis of this fly in Mary's book. The body of the fly is a full body that I am creating with 5 strands of Peacock herl. I have clipped the butt ends of the herl and lay them on top of the hook, tie them in, leaving that tag end. I am going to put them in a rope. So I create a dubbing loop and tie in that loop. I'm leaving my thread partway up the shank so that when I wrap, it will help also control where the herl goes. Grabbing the herl and that dubbing loop with hackle pliers and twisting. The idea of a herl rope is that the thread in the rope helps strengthen the herl. And it's fairly stiff down at the butt ends, so it doesn't want to twist real well down there, which is why I have that thread hanging to kind of control the wrap. But it is a very full body, so the Peacock herl creates that look. I don't know what Mary would have used for this fly, or others in the 1890s would have used for tying the fly. They might have tied it with some wool or something, but it does appear to be a full body like you get from Peacock herl. So tie off that herl and clip it out. I have taken a pinch of white deer hair, stacked it in the stacker. I'll be using that for the front hackle, and I'm going to prepare that by creating a dubbing loop and spinning it into a dubbing loop. I am going to put some dubbing wax on my thread that will help hold the hair in place as I adjust its length. And maybe not quite that much. And I have a spinner that I hang on the thread loop to spin that hair into the hackle. There's not a lot of information on the internet about how to do a hair hackle. Some, enough so that I discovered this process. So I take the hair from the stacker, just pinch those tips, kind of estimate how long I want the hackle to be. It is a fuller hackle according to the illustration, and maybe a little bit longer than we would do hackle today. But I just pinch the tips and then I'm going to cut it. But I'm doing that off camera so that all those butt ends go into my wastebasket and not onto my table. I have this pair of tweezers that are spring-loaded and clamped together well to use as a clamp. A clamp would also work. I'm just grabbing that hair with the tweezers and then opening up the loop, putting that hair between the two loop threads, and then I can clamp it with the thread, let go, and the wax is going to hold that in place, and then I can just gently push and try to get that a little bit higher, and push through. And part of the trick here is figuring out how long the butts should be. I think about that so that they will fold over when I pull back to hackle those hair. So then I'll just spin the spinner and get those to cord up to look like a bottle brush. That's what happens when we put something in a spun dubbing loop. And the more it's twisted, the more individual the hairs are held. Now I want to be careful as I begin to wrap on here that I don't release the loop off of the spinner, because if I do that, then I just lose my twist. And then try to pull back on that hair so that I don't have too much of it out in front over the hook eye. And that's part of the trick on this, the challenge maybe I should say, on using deer hair as a hackle. As I wrap that onto the hook shank, I'm pulling back to keep as clean an eye as I can. Then I'll take my bobbin thread, try to catch in the dubbing thread, the dubbing loop thread, and then once that's caught in, then I can take the spinner off, pull back on that hair again. Got a couple fibers that are hanging out in front there. And so part of the trade-off that I try to think about here is the size of the head versus how clean the eye is. The illustration shows a pretty small head. I think that's about good. And clip off the loop thread. Then I can put a whip finish on here, and if I'm very careful with a flame, I can burn off the deer hair that's sitting out in front of the eye, or in front of the head over the eye. And if I singe some of the hackle, I'll just pull off the singed hair. So very carefully bring a flame in here and just burn out the stuff over the eye. I got a little bit on the bottom hackle there, but it'll just pull off. Smells like burned hair. I'm going to put a drop of diluted goop on that head. But this is a deer hackle fly from Mary Orvis Marbury's book, Favorite Flies and Their Histories. The fly is illustrated by her father, Charles Orvis.